Hi everyone, a quick lecture again inside an actual Adobe timeline. I am preparing to output a lecture that I've done that you've now probably already watched, but I'm getting ready to output this lecture now. I went in and I enhanced the audio in it as I showed you in a previous example, and now I want to talk to you about rendering and outputting your film. So you may be tricked into thinking that you have a movie at this point, but you don't. The way that Adobe works and the reason that it's so fast at what it does is that Adobe links to your original files without changing those files. It's not color correcting the original. It's not changing the audio in the original. Those are being left alone on your hard drive. And what it's doing is it's layering all of these effects on top of that movie in real time. So when I'm watching this timeline play, what I'm watching is the real-time rendering of that timeline by the software, but it's not yet the movie. So a couple things, a couple repercussions here. First of all, once you have put something into your bin and into your timeline, you cannot move it, or Adobe's going to not be able to find it, and you're not going to be able to output this film. So you should always work with clean folders, a clean file tree. Don't change it once you've started. Know where everything is, all of your music, all of your B-roll, all of your interviews. Know where they are, know how to find them. Fortunately, Adobe has a great tool if you do lose something, where you can just relink to that media. Everything else that's in that new location will also be relinked. And if you want a tutorial on that, the LinkedIn Learning video series for Adobe 2020 has a great tutorial for how to search for the missing piece and then how to automatically relink everything. In fact, they have you do that for the practice files as a great way of learning that workflow. Okay, so we're at the point where all of our media is in the right place, all of our decisions have been made, but we need to render and output this movie. We know we need to render it because this line here tells us that the movie is, as of yet, unrendered. And what rendering does, this is important, it saves the film to the hard drive in a temporary holding envelope, right? So it says, okay, at this exact pixel, Adam wanted to do this color correction, this audio correction, this effect, this graphic at this exact moment. Let's save that moment. We're not yet making the movie, but we're saving that moment so that the system doesn't have to try to render it in real time. And that's why when this line turns green, the film will play better in your Adobe program file. So what do? The first thing we do is we go to sequence and we want to render in to out. Now I haven't put an in and an out point. So what that's going to do is that's going to render the entire movie. So I do that. And what we see now is we see that it's rendering. And as it renders, this line is going to change color. Ideally, it will go all green. Sometimes I've noticed that it goes yellow, and yellow is still okay. Red is bad. But it does a little bit of both. I haven't quite figured out exactly why. Sometimes it goes fully green, sometimes it stays yellow. But green means fully rendered. That exact moment is saved in an envelope on your hard drive. Now that's still not a movie, right? So we've got to go through this rendering process. I'm going to stop the lecture and I will come back once this video has fully rendered. So bear with me, I'll see you for your time in about 1 second. Okay, I'm back. I know that seemed like it was only a fraction of a second for you guys, but it was actually about 5 minutes. The clock had said it would take 3:13, it took about 5, so normal. Just remember when you guys are exporting your movies, it's probably going to take a lot longer than that because you can see from my timeline that all I did was cut some pieces of the lecture together and then fix the audio. That's a pretty simple rendering. If I had added graphics, if I had added multiple shots with audio that wasn't recorded with it, the system would have to do a lot more temporary writing of those frames, frame by frame, into the temporary envelopes. Okay, so once that's done, you'll notice the green line that I had mentioned earlier, meaning it's fully rendered. I always save it. I know there's an auto save, and if you guys lose your movie, you're going to be able to find it. Very rarely anymore does Premiere, I shouldn't say this, but very rarely does Premiere crash and cost you hours and hours or days and days of work. It's really good about backing up every 5 minutes. And so if you dig into the Premiere folder, you can find your old timeline saved every 5 minutes going backwards. And so as long as everything is organized and your hard drive doesn't crash, you know, knock on wood, it would be tempting fate in this way. You should be able to get back to almost anything especially once it's rendered, because everything will be saved in that folder. So here we are, we're at our timeline, it's been rendered. It seems like it's a movie. Like I could even, for example, use the grab tilde key and I could watch it as if it were a movie. But we know it's not, because we know that this is just the software creating still a movie moment by moment, but it has not yet been rendered as a video file. So here's what we do to output our film once it's been rendered and once it's been finished and saved. We go to File, Export, Media, and that will bring up a dialog box eventually. And we see our preview, our program window here. We have the option of putting this into Adobe's media encoder software. You could, for example, queue it up. I like that a lot because it means you can work on your machine, you can work on your timeline. So I don't always work this way. When I'm working in larger projects, I don't tend to just output directly. But in this case, we're going to just output it. What I like to do is I like to, first of all, I want to match my sequence settings. So I'm going to match those sequence settings. And I see that it's HD, full HD, 25 frames a second, progressive, 32 megahertz audio quality. So it's not great audio, but I guess Zoom is probably doing that to compress the amount of information that it has to send, I suppose. So I'm just using the Zoom lecture. I set the sequence settings to the Zoom video output. So I'm going to change this name. That's the first thing you should do. And I'm going to save this in my UMD folder. I'll go to the right spot. I am like Bob, hugely interested in really well organized files. So I'm going to call this lecture 5. And I just think you have to be extremely organized. It just doesn't make any sense to do anything else. So file tree well organized. I've named my film. I've matched my settings. They all look fine. Now I can go out and I can export this film. Oh, you know, I have a problem with this machine. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, I'm back. My machine likes to hide these essential buttons here. Drives me crazy. I would much prefer to edit on a Mac, but at home I have a gaming laptop, and it's what I've got. So if I were to rebuy, I'd buy a MacBook Pro, but that's a lot of money. So anyway, so here we are. You can either queue it up and send it to Media Encoder, or you can export it. I'm just going to export it. I have a couple different options. Maximum render quality. It just takes a little longer. You can have it do 2 passes of every pixel so that it eliminates some error. I'm not going to do that today, but when you guys are doing your actual movies, you might want to consider that. High quality, extra time to output, and taking that space on your hard drive just so that it comes out really high quality. So I'm now exporting the film, and as this goes, I'm not going to make you wait the full 10 minutes, but just know that once that export is done, the file will be there in my folder where I designated under the name that I selected. No searching, no randomness, no buried deeply inside of an Adobe folder, which is what will happen if you don't change the name and don't change the location. It'll go way down into the Adobe folder tree, and I find that sometimes to be impossible to find. I can find the backups, but I very often can't find the encoded sequence. So what I'll have to do is retrace my steps, obviously. So I will see you guys in the live lecture in class or in the next video lecture.